See if you can request to join. No, I don't know what's happening. All right. Technical
Hey,
difficulties.
yeah, had to
Hey,
come over to my daughter's room
hey,
to be
let's
able to
let's kind of
get
talk
some
about
peace.
why you kind of started doing your live like this. What made you decide to start doing that?
Yeah, so I started mainly because going back to the first fight of Reese McKee, which was against Khamzat Chimaev,
Right.
his second fight in the UFC, Khamzat's second fight, first fight for Reese McKee. Reese McKee literally lives around the corner from me, like 45-minute drive,
Hmm.
and I had no idea that we had such talented fighters. Aside from Conor McGregor, who's like super huge.
Hmm.
I'm in Northern Ireland for reference, right? So Conor McGregor gym is about 300 miles from here, 200 maybe. So you can take a 2-hour drive and you can go there to Dublin. But Reese McKee is like a 45-minute drive. Um, so yeah, I was one of them fans that just kept the eyes on the UFC all the time, and I didn't really look anywhere else. And I kind of felt bad about that. And I was like, there must be other fans out there that they just look at the UFC and they don't actually pay attention to the journey that the fighter must uh, make to actually get there.
Right.
So wouldn't that be amazing to capture those moments in time where they went from amateur to pro, climb the ranks, get the offer from the UFC, join the UFC, and so on. Um, so that was the idea, pretty much.
I can tell you
Uh,
something. Like back in the when the internet was first starting, right? And
yeah,
I don't know if you've ever been on the underground forum.
no,
MMA.tv is what it's called, MMA.tv. Well,
no, I haven't.
that's where everybody was at. And originally it was called like submissionfighting.com. So, there
Oh,
was
okay,
so like all the hardcore fans, and then there were a lot of fighters there too. A lot of guys that
right.
fight and people that are fighting in smaller shows. So everyone was trading tapes to see like the smaller events because you
Ah,
couldn't watch them at all. So people were
yes,
like trading VHS tapes, like mailing them to each other. I'll trade this event with you if you give me this one.
right,
Yeah,
right.
so that was how people did it back then. But yeah,
Wow.
I would say it's easier now to do it, to follow the journey. But there were
Yeah,
people
like
like that back then too.
awesome, awesome. I didn't know that. Like VHS tapes, you're talking about when I was what, 12?
Right,
The
right.
DVD came out when I was about 12. I'm 32 now, so you're talking what, 20 years ago?
Yeah, I met a guy in Hawaii and he had like 4 or 5 double deck VCRs and he just had tapes stacked up to
Wow.
the ceiling, like just all over his room, you know? And that's what he did. He
Wow.
would sell events to people. He'd trade events. That's what he did. He was kind of sick. He couldn't Yeah, oxygen bottle all the time. So he lived with his mom
Right.
in a hotel in Hawaii. And when I went in his house, or that was a room, like hotel room, I was like blown away. I couldn't believe it, So I started doing the same thing. I got me a couple of them. I started stacking them up
Yeah.
in my studio apartment. Yeah, same kind of deal, man. So it's kind of the
Wow.
same concept.
Yeah. I went back and I started watching from the UFC number one, and I started watching one after the other, after the other, after the other. until I catched up with the John Jones debut in the UFC. So you're talking hundreds of UFCs that I had to watch until I was able to catch up. And then yeah, I saw John Jones debut and everything else that he's done since. So that's when I started watching. It was around that time when John Jones. That's when I was training as well. So like I have a good knowledge of MMA and the game, and like I appreciate it so much from a personal perspective. Someone that has done it, I totally appreciate the effort that they put through, the risks that they are taking, the fact that they are risking their life every time they get inside that octagon, to fight. So I definitely thought I must do something to help the scene over here, and so I started locally, and I found out there was Clan Wars here, and then there was Cage Legacy in the south, and then since then I found out about another 10 other shows that go on, and they feed fighters into the Cage Warriors, which you probably heard about.
Mm-hmm.
And they feed fighters into the Bellator or Brave. And then the UFC tends to pick up fighters from those organizations. But there's a journey to get there, to get in those promotions first. So the guys that get there, and then the guys that go through there, you'll probably see them in the UFC eventually. Like Kamzat, he was in Brave before he went into the UFC. And a friend of mine, Phil Campbell, he's the commentator for Brave. And we used to train together. So like this is all going like full circle.
Yeah, Keurig Genis, he's involved with Brave also, right? Keurig Genis?
Who?
Keurig Genis, I think, does some stuff with Brave too. I think he does maybe some commentating or.
Ooh, I don't know the name, to be honest.
He was behind the MMA.TV website. He was the guy that created it. So.
Oh, cool.
He was around
I didn't know
at the
that.
beginning. Yeah. So
okay.
I'll have to put you on to these guys, man. I'll put you I'll put you on to some of the guys that started like the first websites and some of these tape traders that you'd be interested to talk to them, man. They would.
Like I like podcast wise, where I want to take this is to grow it to a point where I can help amateurs coming through, fighters that just took their first pro fight, second pro fight, that kind of stuff, to kind of launch themselves and to get an audience behind them and get fans behind them, that kind of stuff. So that, that they, whenever they get to the UFC, they are already known. So it's not like you're starting from scratch, just from the moment that you get there. You're not starting from the zero. You are actually have a fan base. What's up? Now give me another 5 minutes or so. Okay. Right. I'll be as quick as I can. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta do that stuff, man. That's how it is.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Ireland your whole life?
No. I'm from Portugal. I came over here when I was 20, so that's in 2008. I'm Portuguese, born and raised. But my parents they went to London when I was 3 years of age.
Where are they from?
So my mom's from Portugal, my father's from Bangladesh.
Yeah, you had it. I lived in Saudi Arabia for a while. When I was a kid, so I was like, when I saw you, I was like, he looks like Middle Eastern, or something.
Yeah. So my father immigrated to Portugal. He met my mom, and the rest is history, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
But then they went together to London. I was there from when I was 3 until I was 4, and then we went to Scotland. So from when I was 4 until I was 5, and then my mom wanted to go back to Portugal because the weather here isn't great. And it was, like time to go and start primary school. So at the age of 6, I started primary school in Portugal, and Yeah, never went anywhere else again, but um, it was kind of good because I got to learn English from a young age. So, that was a plus for sure.
And then how'd you end up in Ireland?
So my parents divorced, and then my father came back to Northern Ireland.
Hmm.
And whenever that credit crunch hit in 2008, my father said, "Yeah, come over here. I'll help. You have a roof at least, and then all you got to do is look for a job." So I came over, and yeah, it wasn't long. I was working, and eventually I moved to Larne, which is where I met Phil Campbell, and that's where I started training MMA for the first time. So it
And so
was.
you just kind of decide to jump into doing some stuff like talking about it and things like that.
Say again, sorry. The
So
what?
how long after you started training did you say, "Oh, I'd kind of like to do some podcasting and things like that"?
Oh, so I started training in 2010, right? I got my this right shoulder here snapped in a Kimura in
Mm.
2011.
Yeah.
Stopped training completely. I transitioned to powerlifting and bodybuilding after that. In 2014, I was in a car crash. So then I went from being 185 pounds to 255 pounds
Mm.
because I couldn't train. And it was only 2 years ago that I started going on a weight loss journey again, and I'm back now to 185 pounds again. So during those 4 years, I was suffering with depression, so I wasn't even paying attention to the UFC
Mm.
or anything really. So it was about like a year ago, year and a half ago, that I started catching up with the UFC again, and getting connected to the scene again. And the podcast came by like accident, really. Like I've started a first podcast on my personal page, which is the Fasting Carnivore page,
Hmm.
and that one was talking about my journey, my weight loss journey, my struggles, like the diet that I was doing, training that I was doing. So it's more like keeping a diary on my own. I wasn't really talking to anybody. Eventually, I started having guests that were also following a carnivore diet, that were also training, that kind of stuff. Um, and I was kind of losing the motivation to doing that podcast. Like
Hmm.
it wasn't the thing, so it wasn't the final product, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I want like it was a good way to start, so I could get to get to a place where I'm comfortable speaking with people. Because of my anxiety, I kind of spent like 2 years inside the house, not really getting out, not really talking to anybody. So that podcast served that purpose. And then whenever I was sitting on that sofa watching Rhys McKee going in the UFC, he got a beating in his first fight, but I didn't really care. I was like, that's one of our guys that's in the UFC right now. So, I was like, I got to do something. What can I do? Start a podcast. Let's do it. And I got to work and I started creating the podcast page, the Instagram, the Twitter, the whole thing. And then I got to work. I got to work in the sense of start DMing everybody and see who wants to come on, and start doing homework and see what events are going on, that kind of stuff. Started reaching out literally to the event organizers and saying, this is what I've done. Do you guys want me to have you on or whatever? Um, at first, I don't think they took me seriously,
Yeah.
because I had like 30 followers or, or whatever. So a big thank you to Corey McKenna, who's in the UFC. She said yes, and I only had like 60 followers, and she didn't really care that I was just starting. She kind of helped me
Yep.
that way. And yeah, I have nearly 600 now, 2 months later. It's only 2 months, so I can't imagine where this is going to go in 2 years or 3 years and so on. Because now I feel that I found what I'm supposed to be doing. So like this now feels right. speaking with fighters every day or every other day, whatever, that feels good to me. And the feedback that I'm getting from people is positive, and especially from the fighters as well. Um, they needed that, like they needed someone that can give them the space for them to show their personality and everything else. Because most podcasts you'll see, they only hit the top names, so they only want
Right,
to speak
right.
with the guys at the top, and there's no one covering like the beginning. Every professional fighter was once an amateur, all of them. Um, and if you go listen to the podcast with Phil Campbell tells a story about when he met Conor McGregor in Dublin before he was even, known, before he was even in the Cage Warriors, which is where he came from to the UFC. So like, there's all these interesting stories that I'm hoping to capture here on the podcast, so that 5 years from now or 10 years from now, whoever it is that makes it to the top, we can then look back and look at these moments in time where, they took their first amateur fight, second amateur fight, when they took their first pro fight, and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And really, guys, I think guys in the beginning or guys that are starting out, when they get in the UFC, they're kind of limited on what they can say. The UFC doesn't
Yeah.
want them to say certain things about their fights, or maybe they don't want other people to hear it. So it's not as interesting, I would say, as guys that aren't in
Possible.
major events.
Yeah,
They're more
quite
willing to
possible.
just talk about whatever. And
Yeah.
and also the guys, like a lot of guys that I talked to that were around in the beginning, they're not in the sport anymore as far as fighting goes. So they'll talk about this, that, and the other, because they're not
Yeah.
worried about offending somebody or getting another fight. So yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah. For
and
sure.
this was stuff like a lot of the guys that I talked to, this stuff we used to talk about online back in the day. So it's just us doing the same stuff we always did, kind of. But yeah, I saw you talking to all these different people, and I thought it was pretty interesting, even though I didn't know who a lot of them were. But yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. Like, I know you were going to talk to Christian today at some point,
Yeah.
and I think
I'm
he's going
still
to do
waiting for
well.
him to reply. I think he might be sleeping or something. I don't know,
Well, he's from
because he
Hawaii,
messaged me.
People from
Yeah,
Hawaii,
he
they kind of
messaged
like,
me. It
yeah.
was like 5 a.m. over here when he messaged me to
Okay.
reply to my
Yeah.
message from yesterday. So I think it's that time zone. Yeah, Hawaii, UK, whatever. Yeah.
He's on Hawaiian time. You'll have to ask him about that. Like people from Hawaii, they always do stuff at the last minute. Like I used to live in Hawaii a long time, right? So I lived
Right.
in Hawaii and Japan. Like people in Japan are never late for anything. If you tell them to be
That's
somewhere,
good.
they're there early. But people in Hawaii, they're usually not early or even on time. It's always
Yeah.
last minute. It's Hawaiian time. That's what everybody calls that. Like
Oh,
everybody's
like
on.
the Jamaicans.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. More
Yeah.
laid back, I would say. Yeah. He'll get
Yeah,
all,
for sure.
but I think you're definitely going to see him in the UFC pretty soon.
Yeah,
Um,
so his brother is there already, right? His
yeah, yes,
brother is
yes.
there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's what I'm going to talk to him about. Like he got to see the journey of his brother ahead of his journey.
Right.
How he went from, I think he's LFA, yeah, that his brother was in as well.
Well, we were all training together in Hawaii. We
Uh-huh.
we were training with the guy Paul Ano, he had been around in the early days. You know,
Right,
he was one of the first guys that was kind of, he was one of the first really good guys at jiu-jitsu on Oahu, and we all trained together. They were probably teenagers at the time. They were teenagers
right.
at the time, and he moved out to Arizona because he got a scholarship to wrestle. He
Okay.
transferred to Arizona State to wrestle, and then he asked his brother if he needed a roommate. His brother came out, so that's why they're in Arizona now.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes, yes. Yeah, I think he said that he was in Arizona time or something. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, so from the last time that I spoke, We are supposed to go live at 9 p.m. So I haven't made the post about it or anything because I'm waiting for him to reply. I'm also waiting on a call from one of the UFC judges who's in Abu Dhabi right now to do a live with me at some point.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the guy is from England, and I'm gonna have like he owns a gym, an MMA gym, and I'm gonna have a few of his guys on. They are fighting in the Battle Arena, which is one of the smaller promotions over here in England. So they have amateurs and then pros. So some of the amateurs turn pro on that show, and then the good ones they normally um, get offers from Cage Warriors. So they then go on to Cage Warriors, and if you prove yourself in there, then the UFC will call you pretty much. Which is what happened to Reese McKee. He was 10-2, 3-0 in the Cage Warriors at the time. He was going to be offered the title, but he accepted that fight with Khamzat Chimaev on 6 days' notice, without doing any wrestling for 16 weeks. So, so that was that.
You know, being in Ireland, like obviously I know Conor McGregor's huge there and all. Kind of tell us what it's like, you know, from someone who's there, what that atmosphere is like as far as do you see him on the TV a lot and stuff like that or
No, no, no.
no?
Like, well, I don't watch TV. That's the thing. Yeah, I really don't. I don't watch TV. I don't pay attention to the news. I think that's all really bad for your mental health.
But I
So
mean like
I just
commercials and stuff, do you see him in a lot of stuff?
no, 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 no. Like I literally mean I don't watch TV at
Oh,
all, like at all. So
uh-huh.
because we have everything on demand, like like Netflix and all
Right.
that stuff, I just go in there and I watch whatever I want to watch. But most of the time, we are watching like kids stuff for my kids to watch stuff. So whenever me and the wife have time to watch anything, it's normally like a movie. We rent a movie online or something, or we go on Netflix and watch. So, but most of the stuff that I see is from social media, like Instagram, right? Um, I, for example, already had a few guys that train at the SPG that Conor McGregor trains, or the SPG that Paddy the Hooligan Houlihan trains. And Paddy is the guy that started the SPG with Johnny Cavan, Kavanaugh. Yeah, whatever his name.
Kavanaugh. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So he's the guy that started the gym with him years ago. And then you saw Paddy in the UFC. He used to fight in the UFC. Um, but yeah. So I had a few guys on. I'm sure we will be seeing some of those guys one day in the UFC. Some of the guys that I'm having right now on the show, they are amateurs right now, but like you look at what they've done in the amateur shows, and you can see the potential in them for sure. So yeah, I have my eyes on a few guys right now.
No, do you think
Um,
those guys come from more like a boxing foundation? Like McGregor, wasn't he more like a boxer previous?
yeah, he was, yeah. The thing that I'm finding, so the commonality from most of these guys is that they got straight into MMA. So MMA in general. So from a young age, they are doing everything, like the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu, the kickboxing, the boxing, the whole thing. So and then there's a bunch of other guys that they all started doing either karate or taekwondo or kickboxing from the age around 9. They started some sort of martial art. Um, and if you go back on the lives that I've done, you will see most of them have some sort of a stand-up, and I would say boxing is about just one or two guys. So the majority is like taekwondo, kickboxing, that kind of stuff.
Mm. So, I mean, like in Hawaii, I would say most of the guys came from like a striking foundation.
Yeah,
There's
yeah, yeah.
not a lot of wrestling in Hawaii. There's no college wrestling at all in Hawaii. You can't
None
leave.
here either.
In Hawaii in college, you have to leave to wrestle. There's some good high school wrestlers in Hawaii, but there's no wrestling at the college level. So
Right?
yeah, I would say it's more of a striking foundation. Like us here in Oklahoma, a lot of the guys are wrestlers. You know, a lot of the best
Yeah,
wrestlers of all time are from Oklahoma. So it's kind of
yeah.
different. So you're saying that it's more to where they're just starting out in mixed martial arts primarily.
Yeah, well, like that's what I think the game is going to evolve. So in the next years to come, you're going to start seeing these killers coming out where instead they started doing MMA at the age of 8 or 6, and by the age that they are 16 or 18, they have their black belts in jiu-jitsu and black belts in taekwondo and so on and so forth. So they are just going to be all rounded from the get-go instead of being a specialist at boxing or a specialist at jiu-jitsu or whatever. You're going to see this more and more guys that are just well-rounded everywhere because that's how they learn from the get-go. Yeah.
Sometimes I think being a specialist can be good because you're more focused on one track in the fight. As
Yeah.
where when you're good at a lot of things, maybe you're not focused on what your strategy is, you know?
Well,
In the old
yeah.
days, you had a lot of specialists, right? So you were
Yes.
going to get right to where they wanted to go right away.
Yeah.
Like Hamza
Wrestler versus striker.
against Reese. You know, he went right to the wrestling, right to where he
Yeah.
knew exactly where he's going to go. So sometimes I
Yes.
think being a specialist can be good.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Like,
No.
um, but the way that I'm seeing this going is both fighters are going to know everything that there is
Yeah.
to know, if that's ever possible. But, and then it's going to be up to each fighter to break down the fight, moves in advance to know what to do, and then, set traps on the standing. And, like, yeah, it's just going to be very exciting to watch the game developing. Um, I, for one, am very excited to be back on the scene and back watching. And I love doing like the breakdowns of the fight and, like really look at the technical aspects of the game. So I like to watch the Open Mat with Dan Hardy on YouTube. I don't know if you watch that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
like
watch a lot of technique stuff for sure.
the guy is like really good at breaking down the fights and all that. Um, I've done the first one today, so like giving my UFC
Oh,
predictions.
you did? You did one? Okay, I'll
Yeah,
at it.
yeah. You can check that on the feed. I'm gonna do one on Wednesday. So what I'm thinking of doing is just go live. If there's anybody that's live with me, I'll invite them on, and they can give me their predictions, and I'll give mine, and do it that way, and I'll see if that's any good. I'll see what the response is.
Okay, Dana
So
White announcement. What do you think?
yes.
Here we go.
Well, I think he'll make it happen, but it's going to have to be a welterweight. I don't see GSP going down to lightweight. Like, no way he's going to go down to lightweight.
So it's not a rematch with McGregor. You don't think that's it?
No,
Okay.
no, that's
I
not
agree
happening.
with
Yeah,
you. I agree.
that's not happening. Yeah,
A lot of people think it
not
is.
happening.
I don't think so either. I'm right with you, man.
No, like Khabib already smashed McGregor, so Khabib, like in Khabib's mind, he has no reason whatsoever to step in the ring with Conor. And then because of the level of respect that he has for himself, and he's a very religious man, and has respect for his mom, and his father passed away, like he done what he was supposed to do. He smashed McGregor, won. Like there's no discussion. It's not like he was caught with anything. He won. That's it. He's past that. So his next goal would be GSP. Like he's always been talking about him, and he wants to beat him, so we can say that he is the best of all time. Even though a lot of people already think that he is the best of all time, but he wants to really cement that legacy and go above that. And yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah.
I agree with you. I don't think Dana White wants to do it because he knows neither of these guys are going to defend any kind of title. But I'm right there with you. I don't think he fights McGregor.
It's a super fight
I
anyway.
agree
It's a
with you.
super fight.
Yeah, I'm right
Yeah,
there with you, man. I'm right there. A lot
yeah.
of people don't believe me. I've been saying that a long time. It's not gonna. I'm right there with you.
There you go. The two specialists.
Exactly, precisely. That'll be an interesting fight because of that. Yeah. Well, I
Yeah, yeah,
appreciate
for
you
sure.
taking the
That's
time. I
right.
know you gotta run. I know you
Yeah,
things to
yeah.
do.
We're gonna have to. We can do this again anytime. So let me know. We just have to work out the times better. And yeah, we can do this again anytime.
All right, man. I appreciate it. It's great talking to you.
Okay, you too.
Take care,
Thank
man.
you. Bye
Appreciate it.
bye.